The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today I have the pleasure of having Elliott Lewis, CEO of Catalyst, on the show. Elliott, welcome. I'm so glad to see you today.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to be able to sit down and chat a little bit, talk about the industry and, what's going on out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a lot to talk about. But before we start, I want to ask you a question I ask all my guests. And it's probably a little bit more of a softball question than some of the things we'll talk about. But what was your first cannabis experience?
The very first time I smoked cannabis, for every all the kids out there, wait till you're 18. I was 13, and it was the summer, I think, between 7th and 8th grade, and the 8th graders were smoking on the beach. And then, we traveled in packs back then. There was 14 of us, but 3 of us, they kind of invited us over, and 3 of us, without thinking, I was one of the 3, of course, because whatever, I'm just a curious guy. We smoked it toilet paper roll style with the tin foil on Alamedas Bay over here, on the sneak. I'm pretty sure it was that brickweed, which I actually smoked quite a bit of. And then we started differentiating as I got a little older. But that's the first time, summer of, I think between 7th and 8th grade. So
yeah, the toilet paper roll totally takes me back, because back then it's we just used what we had.
I'm not sure I got super high the first time I gave it a go. I think it was 3 or 4 times in when I got over all the apples and the bullshit that I could get hands on, and one of the older kids brought me a bong, and then I was like, bro, are you guys feeling what I'm feeling? I got high. I think it took me the 4th time, but it was a bong rip, which I've stayed pretty loyal to the bong. Maybe because of that, who knows? I'm just subconsciously thinking about it now, but I think whatever it was, a year or so later, I got my first bong rip in me, and I was like, whoa, this is are you guys feeling what I'm feeling right now? This is crazy. So, but yeah, no, that was the first time. I don't think I got super high, just because you're trying to now I'm thinking about it, I don't know why we even smoked out of that weird shit, but I trying to stop one end, the other guy's trying to light it. Plus on a beach, it's hard to smoke because you got wind and all sorts of other, factors going on there. But, the big kids in quotes were watching me. So I wanted to make sure I got as good a rip as I could. But, it was probably I didn't know what I was smoking at the time, but I assume it was the worst brickweed ever. And it was out of a toilet paper roll. So maybe got a little mini head change, but I probably could have got just as much doing, circles there at the beach.
Yeah, I totally feel that. My first time, definitely brickweed, definitely did not get high, and actually went to the senior that I got it from, trying to get my money back. And he's like, yeah, give it to me. I'll take care of it. No, that was my first lesson. You just don't do that. So what got you into the industry? Because for those who are listening, especially our colleagues, you've been very vocal about how the industry is working in policy. And what got you into this in the first place?
Well, I was I was a little small time hustler back in the day. I graduated from Berkeley or I went there in 96, which the first time I could vote, was for Prop 215. So I was super pumped up. I thought it was really cool. I got all high. And then Ralph Nader's, I was my guy back then. I used to be way more ideological. If I looked at myself now, I'd be like, capitalist scum. But, but you get older. So we got into that. And then I was lucky that back then you actually had to know somebody to get a medical card. There was only one doctor doing it. So I was able to get a card. This is probably I think the vote happened in 96. I remember the doctor's name oddly, because he was the only guy. Everybody's like, Philip Denny. So I probably got a card in 97, 98. There was one club open in Oakland, and then Berkeley opened one. It's still open today. I think they moved it. It was Berkeley Patients Group.
Yeah.
And by the way, it was $150 to get a card back then, which in today's money is probably 400, right? But it actually got me out of trouble a few times even back then, just a little possession stuff. But, so then I would hang out at the club a little bit, and then, we grew, I started to grow in a closet, and then we got a house with a basement. So we had a little 3-lighter going. We were just idiots, but we were able to get 3 pounds. I think we smoked one, but you could get 4,000 a pound back then. And then I got into kind of brokering weed a little bit. We had a connection in that was bringing in, British Columbian weed. So those were like, like our buddy was like the 5 pounds was like, oh my God, this guy's got 5 pounds. So I used to chop them up. I get like a pound, like 38. I got it down to like 38, chop them up for like 1,100. If you had a sucker, a QPs, right? If you had a sucker, you could make 12. So, that was like kind of my whatever root story. Then I graduated, went on, got into real travel a little bit, went on and got into real estate from like '04 to 13. So like a lot of the guys that I went to school with, my roommate and stuff, they just kept growing, right? And anyway, whatever. He's kind of a dipshit. God bless him. Thanks for getting me in. But anyway, he's cut out. But like, so like the real estate thing started to slow up in like 13. We were flipping a lot of houses, and we had a pretty good run at it. And then let me just turn this off. And then they just kept hitting me up like, hey dude, you want to get in this, you want to get back in this? And I was like, all right, we'll do a grow, right? So we did a few grows in the Compton area because I just knew it well from flipping houses. And you can get like, for whatever reason, like churches that like were out of service was just like you can get them good. So we got them, and I didn't actually do the growing, but was around it, learned a lot about it. And then we had a couple up in LA, nothing crazy. Like I think we had 320 lighters and a 60 lighter. And then I met some other guys up north. In the end, we ended up having 5 properties with 10 hoop houses. They were like 2,000 square feet each. So we were producing some decent amount of cannabis. In hindsight, again, the growers that were on it probably weren't the best. And then in 2016, now my ears are kind of up. Like, I have, I'm not like a real OG, but I got 3 years of, 215, a little bit of Wild West going, right? So, and those were fun times, right? Just different, no regulation, duffel bags, whatever. And by the time I got in, it was pretty like, I had did some research because, just was like, well, what's the risk reward here? And they had passed the Obama doctrine. And so we felt pretty good. And we'd go to the trade shows and we had notebooks on notebooks of, patients and stuff. I mean, I think I could say it. Like, I don't think we ever sold any of our patients, but, we had them in case we got busted, right? And then, from there, when Long Beach came to Long Beach, this is my hometown. It's where I'm sitting right now. I love this spot. I'm born and raised. I got a lot of pride in that. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to try and get one of these retails. So I kind of figured out like what the game at hand was, and I won't bore you with all the intricacies. It was pretty slick, though, I'll say that. So we ended up getting 6 here in Long Beach. And, short version is we sold 2 off. That kind of funded a lot of stuff going forward. And we sold them at like a real high point in the market. And then from there, ironically, one of the ones we sold, this is just kind of like shows how the markets moved. We had a bunch of partners on it, so we didn't get all the money, but we sold 70% for 4.9 million. And so it was a $7 million valuation. We just bought the same store back for 250 grand, 4-year financed from the lender who made the loan. And I didn't even really want it that much. It was just like, all right, for that, I mean, 10 grand a month, like I'm in, right? So I got to figure out what to do with that store. I'm just kind of like shaking my head. I don't need another Long Beach store. But then we were able to reproduce it in Bellflower. And, from there we kept going. An important part of our story is the connected aspect. So, the 4 stores started out as connected. So we always owned them. They were running them. Caleb is, always consider him a mentor. I used to call him the Godfather. I still call him the Godfather. Then my other friend, we call him Daddy, who's also doing really good. And he's like, stop calling him Daddy. But it was really cool. He was at our Capo event, and for him to come and speak and like, bring it all full circle was pretty cool. So they were running them. And then, whatever, we butted heads a little bit, but nothing, like everything's good today. So the short version is we just kind of decided to go our own way. So that was from like 2016 to like 2020. We were with Connected. We had some grows with them. He saved our ass on this YOLO grow we had that was just falling apart. So they came in. We ended up giving them half of that. Ultimately, the outdoor got harder, so that's sold off. And I had met him, maybe this is 2016, in their Sacramento grow. And it was like next level. And then that's when I was like, man, it's just like, I'm in love, dog. Let's go. So that's how we ended up having them run the stores. Again, like I said, a little bit of headbutting going on, but like we both kind of, he's the real man of honor. And we just decided like, hey, look, it was far for them. They were focused on the growing. So, we ended up, taking them back basically and just running them ourselves. And then we launched Catalyst. We just had our 4th birthday, July of 2020 as a brand.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So then from there, whatever, we hit Bellflower. That was the next one. And then we just kept applying and we got pretty good. Like we didn't have politics. And, kind of part of the reason I mean, I don't know, maybe it's part of the reason. Maybe I just have a chip anyway. But all the investors overlooked us, and then we didn't have like the politics. So a lot of the ones we got, we couldn't prove that like a brown bag happened or they gave it to their friend. But about a third of the early ones, now we've picked up a little momentum. We litigated to get, right. One of the ones in Long Beach, the Bellflower one, was through litigation. I could go on and on, because we could prove that their scoring process was inconsistent. And the easiest thing for them to do was just take a license and go away. So, we felt like we fought, every single inch. But like to sit here today when my original goal was like, hey, I just want to get one store in my hometown and that's it, right? And then, whatever, we got 28 and counting, and, it looks nice and all, but we're still just barely scraping by. I always laugh. People are like, "Congrats!" I'm like, "Hey, fucking think it's not really, but yeah, we make it look whatever you want to say. It looks good from the outside, but we always got the tax man chase us and everything like that. But that's the kind of short version of the journey. So once we kind of became Catalyst, I kind of stepped out and started becoming the face of the brand. Which I never would have thought I would have been that. Just even when I had a guy. This is a kind of a long answer, but our marketing guy, like I was like, bro, I don't have no money to do marketing. We're not doing marketing. We'll just price good. The word of mouth will get out. And then he's like, no, dude, this is what you like. Go on Instagram, and like I had barely figured it out. I barely had got on Facebook. And I was like, wait, people do this? They like talk on Instagram. So then I just like, he's like, trust me, dude, just do it. And I was like, I don't know, man, this seems like fucking hanky. So we started doing that a little bit. And then I started liking it, and then, got a little better at speaking on camera. It's funny when I go back to the original ones, in fact, I might like pull some out. I was thinking like, I got an old one from 420. I'd probably have to bleep it now because I got robots watching me now when I didn't then, because I could be like 42% discount. All shit the robots were getting out. But yeah, then we just started building it little by little. And it wasn't like, just the next step, one at a time. Like we didn't really seek out to be whatever we are now, number 2 in the state in retail. It just, by surviving, we just kind of made it there. If you really think about it, there's only a few people on scale that are in California. And, we just always had this radical idea, is my joke, that like we would run a profitable company. So, we've never got away from that, even if it's a little bit of profit. We always are looking at the bottom line before the top line. We never assume that we're going to get some bag of money and that we're just going to have to bootstrap our way forward. But, here we sit today, 28 stores. We got a few in the pipe too. So we just move it a little slower this year because it's getting real tough out there. So I'm just trying to cherry pick really good assets and stay away from, even though I want to do them all, just the C and B assets. It's just too hard right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's wise. And, I know as a plant touching business, you probably don't get as good a sleep as you did when you were in real estate.
My wife keeps asking, why are we so broke? And no, it just never ends, right? So, I mean, even as late as last night, and look, there's not a check that goes out of here that I don't approve. There's not, I'm going through the scoreboard last night. Bang, I pick up that, one of the margins on one of the stores. I know I'm like the back of my hand, right? I'm not trying to just whatever. Just, you can't just casually be a CEO, I don't think, right? And be successful. So,
No.
oh, this margin's off. Why? Okay, fire sale. So, I really touch, every aspect of the business. And like, I know I say like, I don't really own it. It owns me, right? So like, I don't get to put it down. It doesn't work
No.
like that, right? So, and then you never know, while you're sleeping, somebody's trying to rob you. While you're, whatever it is, it's not something, you get to put down. And then, we've been pretty proactive with, some of the stuff we've done too. So, we bring some of the workload on ourselves, but, I have no hobbies, just hang out with my family when I got free time. That's what I like to do. And then, this is, my livelihood. I just, it's hard, but, I love every minute of it. Like I'd rather be I couldn't think of a better industry at a better time, and a better place, at a better moment in history to be in than cannabis. Despite bad policy, you meet some of the coolest people. The people that we still work with are just, we got a great network. Those relationships are super valuable, and just fun to watch people rise with you. So all in all, even though it's a lot of time and it's stressful or whatever you want to say, I love it. So that's, and I think if you're still left, you got to have that love and passion for it, or like you just can't, you're not going to make it.
No, you're not. You're not. I mean, that's it. I got in 2012, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. And just even like when, things were starting to get difficult, people would come in and they'd be like, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. And I would just kind of smile and go, bless your heart. Okay. If you really love it, you'll stick in it. If you don't, you're going to be very disillusioned by the time you're done, because this is not an easy path. You have to have a love for what you're doing. And, I have to hand it to you. It's like you have had massive growth, but your cognizance of scalability is really commendable, because you've seen it. There are a lot of companies that just like keep getting more and more stores, and all of a sudden they realize that they're, property heavy and their liquidity is shit, and they get caught up in something, and all of a sudden a bunch of people are out of work.
I mean, building them is just half the battle, right? So we've
Right.
always run a lean. Like, we opened 13 last year. I don't think I'm going to try that move again. So, maybe we'll open 4 this year,
Yeah.
shoot for 5 next year. But, just we really focused in on the systems, where we could automate stuff, and save on manpower, which is, wherever we could cut, we try and cut with, obviously not hurting people. And then, wherever we can optimize, it's a real easy game, cost down, sales up. So you just gotta, again, I go through every line at every store, and just make sure that, whatever it is, why is the security there an hour after? He should be gone in 20 minutes. Like that's 40 minutes over like, you just gotta, it's a grinder's, sport for sure. And then, I think slowing down has let us get more organized and consolidated and really take care of what we got. And then, some of the tougher stores like LA's tough market, we got 5 out of 6 of them in the black. So, out of the 28, we got 2 turkeys, I think, still in there, but we've pushed everything into the black. But just getting them open, that's just like, it seems like it's a big part of the battle. But no matter what, even a good store, you're going to go down a couple $100,000. And then if you get a, little bit of a tough one, you might bleed out 300-400 grand. You start piling 5 or 6 of those, at a time on top of each other, it gets expensive. So, I'm kind of happy at the pace we're moving this year. I try not to let my natural, whatever you want to say, ambition and just love for the next kill, and I say that in the good sense of the word, drive me too hard, and just, getting a little more patient this year. I don't regret any of the ones we did last year, but because I like all our partners, we took a few over, and, there's some really cool people in there that, and I negotiated some really easy deals on some of them just because, I like the person or whatever, but, probably not deals I would do this year just because we're just really trying to guard our capital and make sure that we survive. I think now if you're just being objective, surviving and having a little bit of cash flow and not getting over your skis is going to lead to, I think, positive outcomes down the road. I don't know exactly what they are, but we've kind of positioned ourselves far enough along that we don't need to panic, that we don't have enough scale to survive, whatever probably descheduling or rescheduling is going to bring.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of challenges in our state. And when I first was seeing your videos, the thing that came to mind, I went to an offsite meeting, and somebody was like, "Hey, have you seen Elliott?" I was like, "Yeah." What do you think? I'm like, "I think Elliott says what most of us bite our tongue about."
Yeah, it just happened by accident, and then we kind of leaned in. I toned it down a little bit. I don't want to say I toned it down, but just got away, because whatever. I talk a certain way. I never really stopped talking that way, but just trying to notch it down a little bit. And then, free speech is not free, right?
Right.
So we've had repercussions over the free speech, all sorts of things that have happened. And so, like, sometimes I want to say it, but I'm like, this maybe is better unsaid. So I think when we first, there's like this evolution. When we first got on, we were kind of like, I've got away from like, ooh, did that get views or that not get views? It's like, no, just say what you're going to say, and then it's fine. And, whatever, don't, it's always me, but you kind of go into this little, like, my example is like, Macho Man Randy Savage was my favorite wrestler growing up. So I think somehow like that's somewhere in my subconscious. So you go a little bit into this like hyper person, you only get 40 seconds. So I am trying to move the content. I'd like to see people, like, we just did a great episode. I mean, what we're doing now too, right? We just did a great episode with Josh, a guy from Infinite, with Thomas, Doja, we just filmed one, so that's coming next. So, and then I just hired a couple writers literally yesterday that are going to start blogging because I think all this stuff's really interesting. And, in all humility, like I have a lot of access to information and maybe I can't give it all up, but I would like, to focus a little more on education while we drive the policy. And then, as much as we can, walking that line of like calling them out, but not totally poking them in the eye, which I'd say a couple of years ago, I just had a case of the fuck. It's like, fuck you. I hate you all. You're fucking scum. And like, I kind of think the same, but just, I didn't notch it down too much, but I would say if I was rolling it at 10, trying to get there at an 8. Plus, I just think at this point, like by accident, like I was just chilling when I was selling real estate, just like going about my day, enjoying the water, the beach, da, da, da. I was working, but whatever. And
I bet you had a hobby then too.
Yeah, I had a couple. Yeah, I get, and I wasn't really trying to be like an activist or whatever. It's just like you could only watch this, or me personally, I can only watch this for so long without getting heated. And then I think my real like FU moment was, we got audited like 3 times in a week at the same store. So I think it was just from reporting. And look, at this point, the DCC knows we don't fuck around. So like that's all kind of slowed down. The CDTFA, whatever, we have a disagreement on a tax position, but, they've stopped, I mean, we're under audit, but that's kind of chilled out a little bit. So like, they'll come, right? We had an issue with my wife's restaurant when we brought up the police and fire overtime. That's the third rail of politics. Don't do that. So, the bureaucratic state and the whatever you want to call it, the fourth branch of government is very powerful. So, yes. I do have a little bit of fear about that and just need to remember like, okay, well now you feed 600 people, you got a lot of investors, like I gotta walk the line a little bit more. I'll still get my point across, but like, sometimes some things get left better unsaid. I try to get it all out there, but every once in a while I'll hold one back or just notch it down a little bit so we don't, piss anybody off too much.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. Well, I mean, that kind of wisdom comes with experience, right? And I think that, a lot of the conversations have to be had. Like, one of the things with Planted, when people say, oh, Sara, you have a cannabis podcast, it's like, yeah, but it's more than that. It's about getting people to understand how government works and how you have a voice and how you have to put that voice out to create change. Now, sometimes it's not so much what you say, but how you say it. But when people, like, I remember back in the day, because I used to be the head of education for a chain of dispensaries, Apothecarium. And when legalization happened, there were a lot of people who came in and they're like, my favorite product's gone. Everything's expensive. I can't open these damn packages. It's your fault. It's the brand's fault. Blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, okay, first off, let me tell you how the sausage is made. Let me tell you how taxes are baked into it every time that this cannabis changes hands. There is a tax that's applied to that. And these are all the different things that are happening that are making your cannabis expensive. And it is not the brands. It is not the dispensaries. We actually are just as unhappy about it as you are, especially because we know we're going to hear back from you. But this is what you get to do. You get to come out of the closet and let these people know who depend on your votes for a job that you pay taxes, use cannabis, you contribute to society, and you vote.
Yeah, well, I'd like to, and I think we're working on it. The industry's coming together, and for sure, I think what's been underrated in the tax is it mostly gets passed on to the consumer, which for an in quote regressive state is a super regressive tax. By the way, side note, my least favorite commentary is the dispensaries are jacking. It's like, bro, we used to make way more margins. Trust me. There's just 35% or so in there. But I think there's a movement to organize the industry. There's a press release coming soon. I won't say too much. I'm probably not the perfect face for this one, but there's there's a lot of large groups that have put down their weapons. I think pretty much all the beefs are quashed, or at least like, well, I'll sit in a room with you, quashed. And I think we're going to start, doing our best to speak in one voice, at least from the retail side, which I think will be helpful because sometimes up there they don't, really know. I mean, just even on this hemp bill, whatever your position is, in jumps Origin Council, in jumps, Kiva that wanted to rewrite it, all these different people, and then the retailers kind of thought this, and then the growers maybe think this, and then the hemp guys think this. I think at least having a segment that can speak in one voice with all the letterheads, which is coming really soon, really proud to be a part of putting that together, is going to be important to push things forward. And they have it in every industry.
Right.
The oil companies hate each other, and they do JVs offshore and get the permits together, and then they still hate each other, but they've, for the greater good, they do it. And I think the industries realize, and I think this part I could probably share, but it's like anybody who's made it this far, it's like respect, right? So I think there's that level to it, and like whatever. Now we're in the NBA, we're already there, and just trying to figure out how to make the league better. Let's negotiate as players working together, and some of the lead players doesn't mean that all the voices aren't important. Taking the ball and then getting industry consensus and moving it forward, I think is going to be super critical, because it is true. If you survived, and this is just from interviewing people and knowing people, every single one of them has two things in common. I call it the Mamba mentality, just the relentless grit. And two, they're just hyper passionate to the extreme about whatever niche they carved out in the marketplace, or they would not be here, or they just they could lose $400 million and keep going. But I mean, like real people, right? Fit one of the two, unless you just can blow money because it's a hobby or something. But every single one of them that to a person has that quality in them, which I think is super cool and interesting, and why you get some of the coolest people in cannabis. Just it sucks that it's hard, but sometimes I think it's good that it's hard, right? So what would you rather do? You rather run a 40-yard dash? That's just who's fastest, maybe basically who has the most money. Or would you rather go to the American Ninja Warrior course and do the whole course, right? And because the course is so hard, it's not a game that really could be bought. And I think the culture is strong enough that the culture definitely can't be bought. And so, and you see the big companies, in other states, and I won't get into specific deals, they still have to, I guess they are trying to buy the culture, but they still have to at least partner with the culture to make what they're doing tenable, which is really cool.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Because with the stuff that we've been having in California, we've had some MSOs that have kept a little foothold in California for things to turn around, but we've had some of the larger companies leave, and that's not like the California-based companies like your Kivas and stuff like that started out as mom and pops and grew, and they still are maintaining their leadership. Do you think that having some of them leave but kind of be here gives us a chance to have more local homegrown businesses, whether they're small or large, survive a little better? And what do you think as far as when things normalize, do you think they're going to rush back in?
Look, if you're not in California, you're not going to be in the game. And by birthright, we have this lucky thing. And my personal belief, California is going to take it all. There'll be a few exceptions. So, with that in mind, I think that the MSOs leaving California is short-sighted. I get it. It's a terrible place to do business. I think I could say this. We picked up one of True Leaf's, God bless them, for basically free. They just abandoned their Grover Beach. So, I'm not sad at it. Anytime one of the big boys leave, I kind of get a little chuckle, if I'm being honest, because that's just how I am. Get the fuck out. How much you lose, dog? Get out. And there's been a lot, right? The bust out and or leave. But I do think that, and you see it happening. I was chatting Doja up the other night, and dude, this guy's international, right? And he's in 9 states. I got, friends coming up now in 9 states. You see Connected and Alien Labs in Arizona and Florida, Jungle Boys in Florida. You see Cookies traveling around. I know Plug Play and Turn and a Rove. All these guys I'm fairly friendly with. It's the California brands that are winning. So in so much as like, yeah, this is the hardest, worst place to do business on the planet and probably one of the hardest industries. There's, I think, a huge opportunity for migration east. And there's going to be a moment where the rush back in is going to happen. When and how, I think is, gonna be an interesting one. But all the big boys left. There's a few products that are still brands that are still left. But I mean, if you run them down, like Cure Leaf, Tuck Tailed and Run, yeah, they're selling hemp back in the state. I think they're gonna get shut down on that. True Leaf, they left. Uh, you know, what you call it?
GTI's just got one, that one in
Yeah,
Petaluma. Not
they
Petaluma,
got one.
Pasadena.
Yeah, they got the one. That's it. And GTI is, one of the really well-run MSOs. Like they actually make money, right? So,
Right.
uh, my guess is they're going to want to try and partner with somebody who's, built the scale already. And it's probably not the best policy, local control in every way, but it also makes it that it's super hard to recreate. Like you can't just buy this, right? Like you could try, but it's not that easy. And the really good markets that were hard to get in that you had to win your way into, like a Pomona or a Bellflower or an El Monte, where some of our better stores are, like I ain't, good luck getting into Pomona, right? So that and we got first mover advantage, which is giant because it's way harder to lose customers and to steal the other guys. Basically, is what it is. But so I think they're gonna come back. But I also like. I mean, I'm born here, so it's kind of why I ended up here. But I also think that fast forward a decade, California is going to run game on everybody, and then these MSOs have interesting models. They're built on protectionism. So like they didn't, in quotes, grow up, like as far as cannabis goes, like we did. Like we're ready for a knife fight. We fight 2/3 black market. We fight the most competitive markets in LA County. Like these guys can't run like that. That's why they're not in California. In fact, the store I took over, I would have been a profitable store for me. It wasn't crushing, but it was like doing okay, right? And then obviously they closed it. We're building it back up. But I'm like, why would they close that? So they're just built different. They got big overhead. They got big corporate salaries. So as things move east, I just want to stay patient. We may make a move towards the end of this year. We shall see to monetize some of the stuff we've done in state because it is so hard to work here. But I think it's only moving east. I don't think east is moving west. Like God bless Colorado and Illinois and wherever else. But let's be honest, are Californians going to smoke Colorado or Illinois weed? It's just never going to happen. Are people in Colorado and Illinois and New York? They already are, right? It's going to smoke, especially in New York, right? Are they going to smoke California weed? Yes. So I just think that there's a huge market advantage there that doesn't show on the profit and loss and cash flow statements yet, but it's built in by birthright. And I think even beyond the United States, shit, Europe might go open before, because whatever, the Crescos of the world are going to keep Illinois, and Verano on lock, right? The True Leaves of the world, be interesting to see what happens with the hemp, are going to keep Florida on lock. But, Portugal, Barcelona, UK, they might be open to California exports before our own other states, but like that's where it's going. People are always going to want California weed. It reminds me of that Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Californication.
Yeah.
Great song, but like it's not just weed, but weed more than anything. The surf culture and just the culture of Hollywood and everything else comes from California to begin with, and like you could be anywhere in the world and see California type clothing and or California music blasting on the radio. So that's, kind of a cool upside of being California. Just again, survive it, play long game. I feel like we'll have our moment to attack and just not panic that I need to get there yet.
Yeah, I was just up in Alaska the other month and somebody gave me a joint. When I looked at it, I realized that it was a California trap product. And I was just laughing my ass off. I was like, we're everywhere. I mean, when we're looking at California, I just think that if and when we get into interstate commerce, I'm hoping that the small farmers are also still, here to be able to support that too, because the craft farmers are so important.
Yeah, they got fucked on that unlimited tier twos. I think what's happening, so we're working on this category 4 distillate. It's the future. It's
Mhm.
everybody's already doing it. I'm getting taxed. So, not to get too down a rabbit hole, but this is why I think where small farmers will start to do good again. The big farms all almost have to use something. So what they've been doing is using non-DCC pesticides that are illegal to apply. And I have huge data sets that aren't all my own, but just from people that have been willing to share them. So like take the vapes, the Disty vapes, they're 24% have pymetrozine, which is a likely carcinogen. And so now as we're moving to category 4, we're going to start marking them real soon. And then pretty soon I probably just refuse to carry anything that's not category 4. So the biomass is bifurcating. The Cat 4 is a term I made up just because it was Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3. It sounded kind of fun, the next evolution, but it's taken hold. People are asking for Cat 4 leaders. It was an easy way to describe it. But the cool part about that is, I'm sourcing for some of the brands, small farm, biomass, and then that also kind of like highlights their flower and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see that play off, as best we can. I try to get to them all. It is one of the hardest things, at our height, we were at like 160. I'll put them all on. It just, kills the kids, and then holding inventory kills us. The kids, the guys that run at 25, they're not kids, but they're kids to me. But so we got it down to like 125, 130. And, one of the things that I loathe is, always just the cool DM from, a Humboldt farmer. And it's like, oh man, I wish we could get you all on. But we got plenty of small farms on there that are holding their own, that we do our best to try to highlight and uplift. And I think there will be enough that survive, not all, because that's just the rude, capitalist society that we live in.
Right.
But I do think there'll be plenty that do survive, just like microbrews, right? Like, you got your Budweisers, you got your microbrews, and I think people are starting to realize as they get gamed up, craft, not 100%, but generally speaking, safer, no pesticides, grown with more care. When you start growing on scale, you got to blast that crop with shit, especially when something gets after it. And then you got overdrift, you got, drift issues, even if you're not doing anything, devious. You're fighting a war of drift, especially in Santa Barbara and the Central Valley. Had interesting conversation with Tom, like they're buying up the real estate around them and turning it to organic farms just to keep the drift out. So I think craft survives. Look, sadly, if I had a bet, probably, a good chunk of it dies out. But I think the guys that are really grinding, will ultimately, survive. I could just, if I was going to rattle off, probably 15 on our shelf that I think is going to survive. That makes me feel good that we could be part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And going into what you were talking about with like pesticides and things like that, we've been having a lot of controversy with testing in the state. What do you think we need to do to tighten that up and to create some more accountability? Because, we got legalization, we got medical programs on the backs of the patients and wellness. And if we are putting out products that people are consuming that have carcinogens in it, we're not showing up as our very best. What can we do?
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing grossed me out. Look, I'll say this, at first and foremost, 80% of the black market tests dirty. We've tested a bunch of it and the hemp, right? Which has kind of changed my opinion of a lot of the hemp movement. But again, I'm not bashing on the hemp guys. I know some of them do it right, but it's dirty. I think prior to 24, there was some bad conduct going on. I won't get into specifics where people were just flat out cheating. There's not a lab guy I know that wasn't offered a duffel bag. So I think one thing they can do is like not let you pick. The brand shouldn't be picking the labs, right? Because right, it's a problem, right? So, and I don't know how you pick them, whether it's random or the retailer gets to pick them, because I don't have a dog in the fight as far as like whether or not I have a financial interest in the batch. Of course, I want to see everybody do good. And look, the least we owe as an industry is safe product. That's the least we owe. That's the lowest bar that we owe. Now, I think the issue is, look, all the big brands, we've tested. They're all DCC compliant, but ultimately humans are humans. They're always going to game the testing. So, been really impressed with the work that Inresco and Infinite have done developing these 380 chemical tests. Josh is going to expand his to 680. And why these are important is it tests for everything, and then you figure out what's going on, and it's just going to be a constant game of cat and mouse. This will be the year of the pymetrozine, which is Endeavor. They're just spraying it on plants that's showing up in parts per million. So we're doing a couple things. One, we're going to start tagging what's Cat 4 because I just want to address it immediately. So you'll know, hey, this is Cat 4. It ain't got nothing. Cat 3, it may or may not. It passed DCC. So at least our customers will have informed consent. Then I think eventually we make it all Cat 4. And then a couple manufacturings, raw garden, some testing labs. We're starting this thing called Echo, which is something you'll be able to opt into. And so we're debating, I'm letting the scientists debate over what they want to put on it, but I think it's going to be 91 or 81 chemicals because there's about 15 and a 380 panel. We've seen enough data now. There's like 15 that are being used, right? But again, you don't know which 15 are being used unless you do it.
Right.
So you opt into the brand, and the only truth is the shelf because you can do a lot of shit before you get to the shelf. The shelf is the shelf. It's there, right? So you'll opt in as a brand, and this is something that we're working on. And then from there, it'll be a nonprofit, but whatever. There's a little bit of a marketing angle to it. It's always nice when ethics and because I'm having these conversations with the brand, it's really positive. It's very rare when like really, really good ethics, in my opinion, is going to line up with really, really good marketing, right? So I think there's an ROI in it too. So that's why I think I'm calling it Category 4. It's just an undeniable step forward that I think everybody's going to do, but it's going to take constant testing, shelf testing, because that's really the only truth, because guys can switch and do all sorts of stuff. And the lab doesn't know. I mean, generally, like you could give them this oil and put that in the vape. You can give them this thing. So the only truth is the test, and then just stay vigilant on what they're going to use next year, right? So, and it takes about a year and a half for this stuff to come out of the system. We're going to put a stop to the pymetrozine on our shelf very, very soon. But, it's going to take year and a half for that to work itself through the marketplace. I suspect since it's on the radar, they won't use that next year, but what are they going to use, right?
Right.
So just keeping track of that. Look, again, this is not my expertise, but I had a ton of conversations with, even a lot with the LA Times, who wrote the story, all the labs, everybody involved, even the people that were accused, just to get everybody's, input. And I think at the end of the day, the self-regulation is going to be the only way to do it, because the DCC is behind. God bless them. They should be embarrassed. They've had this information for a long time. There's a real crusader that's been fucking giving it to them. God bless him. Fucking a hero in my book. People have mixed views, but I don't get into tactics. If you're doing something that's good, that was my joke. I'm like, bro, if I was judging your tactics, I'd be a fucking hypocrite. But I think it will be all of us working together. It can't just be one person. And I think it's going to have to be industry-led, industry-driven. I had like a realization like, wow, I'm actually uniquely positioned to muscle people. And I try to, not do it for, I try not to take advantage of muscling people. But this is a moment where I'm going to use it. And, we might be half of somebody's sales or 30% of their sales. And we say, you got to do this. We're the choke point. So like, in conjunction with, I'd say, Josh from Infinite, who started it, a few other brands who are already on it, and our ability as a shelf to be like, dude, we're not going to sell poison. Like, I'm just not going to participate in that at all. I think you'll start. In fact, I got 2 announcements coming out this week. In fact, I just talked to the guy. I'm like, I told you could be first. They're switching to the Category 4. They're sourcing it. So it's just interesting to watch it happen in the marketplace where like a Cat 4 leader is now like 1,200. And the old leaders where you don't really know, just DCC, you call it Cat 3, is like 900. So there's already a bifurcation in price because there's a demand for it. And I think the consumers, when they get camed up, the demand will continue, and it'll be a little bit like, food. You could pay for there's a debate about organic, but leaving that aside, you could pay for the organic versus the non-organic. But I'd like to see just everybody do it. Even informed consent is better than nothing, but I don't really want to be a part of that, but at a minimum, we get everybody to informed consent. But I do think sometime in October, we're going to start marking products off. We'll see a lot of people switch. And before the end of the year, I think most of our shelf will be Category 4.
I'm just glad that you're using your powers for good, because we both been in this a while, and we've seen like the fact that I think one of the biggest detractors from our industry is the fact that people were not able to work together, because we work better together. We have more power. We have more of a voice. And I know there are people who've been really, especially with not having the income that we did in other years, like putting money into lobbying organizations for some people just seems futile because not much came out of it. But we need to keep going because otherwise these large companies where their background is big pharma or what have you, they're going to eat our lunch. And we need to band together and work together whether we like each other or not. And I think that, really looking at our commonalities changes a lot of the conversation as well.
100%. The analogy I use is Game of Thrones. Like, all right, we had our fun. Now let's like go fight the undead, which is, big pharma, tobacco, the government, everything, right? So like now I think there's a sense of that. I mean, people we were bad. Look, they set up the licensing process for us to naturally battle each other, right? So like
Right.
they're giving out 4 licenses, 10 of us are battling. Like, if you're competitive, where do you think that goes? But I think we've got to the like, all right, let's go. We're all on the same team. So I do think that's happening. And then I think relying on the DCC, and everybody can point fingers all they want, but it's each and every one of our responsibility as an industry. And that's to me the lowest standard that we could provide. And I think it makes it easy now that it's going to be, now that it's like on everybody's radar and, different people are moving the ball. There's like, when you reverse engineer the math, it's like 25 cents a cart to make it safe. But what ended up happening is except Raw Garden, all the large producers source their distillate. There's 3 or 4 major sources of distillate.
Right.
It's a widget. So those 3 or 4 guys are just getting priced against each other. Then those guys are just pricing the farms against each other. And so my big mistake as a retailer was losing track of the farm. So going forward, like I want to know what farm it came from. And anything that we put out, we want to know that I always thought I'm not gonna run a disty brand. But now I'm like, all right, there's a niche for it. We'll do it. We're working on the rosin cure resin. We'll do this. But I want to do single source disty, which nobody's done. Like it's an important story where it's coming from, where the biomass is coming from. So and I've been sharing data with a lot of these people. And then it's, look, some of these guys that are big producers, I've talked to them all. I won't rattle them off too. Spoke with all of them. And like some of their really good friends looked them in the face and said, we don't use anything. All right, go send it over Infinite. Oh, they use something. Tests don't lie, right? So, and I'll say this, it's not an excuse. But when you're trying to make payroll or pay your mortgage and something's attacking your crop, and you're on your last leg and it's a matter of survival, you should never do it. And this is not to co-sign the move, but people do dumb shit. So I also think that the farmers have been so beat down. Like there's always bad, actors in there that, it's just full greed. But some guys, they only got one crop. They can't lose it. Something starts getting it. And, they get a loose moment with their morals. So, I've been overpaying for the biomass, just source 50 liters to help out some of our brands. The guy would have been happy with 30, 31. Really, the price is 25. I paid him 35. Because at the end of the day, it's not that big of a difference when you fast forward it all the way forward. Just the incentives were never in the right place. And by like going in the rabbit hole and resolving it just mathematically, it's like, wait a minute. For a fucking quarter a vape cart, like this is what we're doing. This is ridiculous. So like, as part of what we're doing, I like, yeah, it's all right, fine, we lost the disty line. And I'm not like launching it. It's not going to be super profitable or anything like that. Who knows? But, we're going to launch it. And then I got, 15-cent bags and no packaging. And my message is clear. And I got intentionally shitty bags. But like, guess what? I could have paid $1 or 60 cents, but I'd rather pay 15 cents for the bag and a quarter for your health because like, that's where our head space should be at. And yeah, could have a little bit of control over not control, but influence over my soldiers or whatever you want to call it, the realm to sell in a regular bag. But it is like the fact that for a quarter a cartridge, we're poisoning people with likely carcinogens on mass scale is like once I really figured it out is actually just like shocking and makes no sense. And I think once people fast forward it forward, and they hear me articulate it in that way, I think they realize that it's ridiculous. It's just the way the system got set up and distillate becoming a widget, just nobody really cared. So now it's no longer a widget. And we're in the process of seeing that happen where the prices are changing. People want to know where the biomass came from. We've tracked a few down. I got a couple farms that are blackballed. I got a few other, one I just cold called the compliance, like, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, we'll call you back. I heard through the grapevine they're scared shitless. And I just cold called them, right? But and different guys, the bigger producers, we're sharing a little bit of notes on the farms that are using it, or we think, we're not sure, but like it's when it shows up in parts per million, it's not overdrift. So
No.
that's its application.
Yeah.
And again, some of this stuff's a felony. So I think there might be some enforcement actions on that. They started on the hemp. You saw one where it was a pesticide enforcement, not a hemp enforcement. So again, we just have to, and I think it's going to get there. And then I think people will see that steak in quotes category 3, they're not going to sell. Our bud tenders aren't going to sell that. Our bud tenders are good people. They want to sell clean product. They're salt of the earth, love the plant. Like that's why you become a bud tender. 98% of them smoke a shitload of weed. That's why they become a bud tender. And the last thing they want to do is sell poison. So like that little mark and just moving the market in that direction, I would say as of about a week or two ago, I don't want to jinx it, but it's a wrap. It's going to happen, right? It's just a matter of time. There was a moment when we were trying to push it in that direction, but I'm seeing the watershed break. I literally, before I got on, the guy texted me all his COAs for 100 liters of Cat 4. So all the big brands are moving. I've talked to them all. So it's cool to see it happening. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of, they're going to be a month or two, or is it going to be 3 or 4, but it's going to happen.
I'm so glad about that. And God, Elliott, there were so many other things that I wanted to talk to you about today. You're just such a wealth of information. Will you come back?
Anytime. I could go all day, whatever. Just let me know. Yeah, no, I'm a busy one, but no, I'm always got time to talk. I appreciate you having us on, and
Absolutely.
that's super cool.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
I love geeking out with you, and you've got so much information. And I just think that another conversation would really help inform people too, as far as how they can get active as well and what we need to be doing, not just as an industry, but as citizens, because it affects all of us. And for people who haven't worked in a dispensary, and my entry into cannabis was going from middle management at a civil rights nonprofit to going behind that bar. And spend some time behind the bar and you understand what a personal, emotional thing cannabis is for the people who use it, and how much the people who work in the industry care about what they're doing. And we have so much more work to do. We've just got a couple more minutes left, but just like quickly, like what are some of the things that you're hopeful for that are bringing you joy in what's going on with what we're doing?
Well, I'm super hopeful that, I think the industry is coming together, old rivals putting down their weapons. I think that's the huge first step. I don't know how we do a better job of it's like I'll meet one of my mom's friends, or it doesn't matter who, and oh God, you must just be killed. You're rich. You're just, no, it's not like that. So there's a misconception out there that like cannabis, we got a shitload of money. No, it's not the duffel bag era anymore. So I'm really optimistic about that. I'm super optimistic that we'll be back to fully clean product and staying vigilant. We have a big tax case against the CDTFA, which the short version is you only get a taxes on the oil, not the cartridge. I think we have a winning position there. In fact, we just built the tech around it, so we don't have to do it by hand. So that would be probably the biggest thing in the state, potentially as much as a 10% tax reduction if we could be successful in that. So that gives me hope. And then again, I think eventually they're just going to have to deal with it. I don't know how many more companies need to get busted out, but I also think that if who's left, the resiliency and the ferocity, and like we're all just a bunch of cockroaches and we're too goddamn stubborn and just relentless to put that, like to stop. So like that spirit, like, I just don't think you can kill it, right? Like they could try every which way, but and again, like sometimes you think like, are we going to make it? What's going to happen? But I can't visualize a world where we're not. And I think a lot of other people I just can't accept it, right? And I think a lot of other people that I know that are doing well, or what well is today, which is survival, have that same mentality. So you put all those things together, I think the future is bright. And then I think guys that maybe we have to wait 5-10 years for California to reform its policy, but dabbling in other states, people are cranking, right?
Yeah.
So I think we'll have to follow that train eventually. We're just been slow to it because we don't want to get over our skis, but I think there's huge opportunity in these easier markets as a California brand. So it might be hard here, but because you're from California, you'll get advantages in those markets. So overall, I'm optimistic. We'll see if descheduling is a Trojan horse or not. As to your point, here come the big boys, and maybe they end up snapping it all up, and there's nothing we can do. But I'd like to be the last samurai in my fantasy of where the world goes. But we'll see if we can live that out. But all in all, like I said, coming together, just the spirit of the industry, and we're just kind of like F you, we're not stopping, grit. I just love that about this industry, and the more shit they throw at us, the more resilient that we become. So I think if we stand on that, I don't think anything can stop us.
Yeah, I think if we all work together and just see our commonalities and how much is at stake, that we can change a lot of things. And for people who want to follow you on social media, how should they do that? Because those of you listening out there, if you haven't checked out Elliott's videos, you should. They're very informative. I love his rants.
I did have to take them all down, but they have me in jail right now. The robots are going wild. They're purging everybody's page, but
I know.
I tiptoed back in. It's Catalyst_CEO. I got a backup, just WFTP_CEO. By the way, I'm trying to get on X. I got time for a little shit, figure that platform out. Same thing. And then our product thing is Cat4_certified. But my main page, Catalyst_CEO. Hopefully it survives. I'm on a little bit of restriction, but I just got off the no live, and I got off they could, like, if you repost a story, a non-follower could see it. So I'm getting some of my privileges back by shutting up, but I had to delete it all. I had like 27 violations, a pros some, then somehow they were getting in my archive. But I started posting again like last week on the account, and I'm just being real careful not to directly, talk about product on that account, and hopefully it survives it. But they're going after everybody's account right now, which is its own topic.
Yeah. My personal one is shadow banned. Fortunately, the podcast is not, but it's AI. I just I can't wait till we don't have to deal with this anymore. Thank you so much, Elliott. I really enjoyed our conversation. I want to dig into more stuff with you next time, and just thanks.
Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Weed for the people.
Weed for the people.
Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn. We are there. So join us, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.